Wait. It says they can keep troops in Japan. They can keep troops in Japan, but they don't have to defend Japan if Japan is attacked. Well, that doesn't sound fair. Yeah, but what did the Japanese think? Yeah, I'm not surprised. Okay. Yeah, talk soon. September 9th, 1951. This war, the Korean War, has been in action for 14 and a half months. But there's another war that comes to an end this week. This week, after nearly a decade, the state of war between the Western Allies and Japan officially comes to an end. I'm Indy Neidell, and this is the Korean War. Last week, Soviet reinforcements, though not combat personnel, poured into Korea from the north. This is explainable since the peace talks were broke off 2 weeks ago, and the war is very much active. In fact, it was active all week long at the Battle of Bloody Ridge, which really earned its name. The battle ends this week, though. There are a bunch of sources that describe the brutality of this battle over a feature of the local terrain. I will paraphrase and quote a couple of them. T.R. Fehrenbach, in This Kind of War, writes that by the final stages of the battle, cohesion and teamwork among the UN troops has broken down. Rotation has brought in green troops and green officers. New troops are sent into companies in the middle of combat actions, with results like Able Company, 1st Battalion, 9th Regiment, reporting 100% casualties 3 straight days. Conventional supporting weapons have not been invented that can dislodge a stubborn enemy from deliberately prepared positions. The only way to reduce the long ridge was bunker to bunker, at close range with rifle and grenade. It was horrible, bloody work. And each night, from ridges running to the north, the NKPA sent fresh men pouring into the disputed positions. Soon, 9th Infantry identified corpses from 6 separate regiments of the Inmin Gun. The Inmin Gun is the North Koreans, the KPA. Seriously, this is a whole US division and a whole North Korean corps that are focused on a pretty small patch of land. And in many ways, it resembles the meat grinders of the Great War. So is this the future of the Korean War? For it's a dark future indeed, if so. The new American guys thrown into the fight, they're not cowards, they're brave, they try their best. As do the ROK guys, the South Koreans, as do the North Koreans. But for this kind of fight, from the UN side, that can't be enough. They need flamethrowers for one thing, and they don't have enough of them, or men trained in how to use them. Oh, okay, well, they haven't had them. By this week, they do have some, and also an ad hoc school to teach people quickly their operations, so that's something. That was ordered set up by 2nd Division Deputy Commander Bull Boatner. But the problems are legion. Replacements were wandering up to engaged units and getting killed in the first hour before they could report in. Boatner ordered replacements to be kept in the replacement company at least 1 day and to have 5 or 6 days special training before being sent into combat. The 9th Infantry tried hard, but it was shattered against Bloody Ridge. This week, the brutal frontal attacks of last week have at least not been ordered. The 23rd Infantry is trying from the flanks, while 9th continues prowling and probing. The Battle of Bloody Ridge ends midweek on the 5th. The North Koreans, the KPA, give it up. ROK 35th Regiment, ROK is the South Koreans, takes positions on Hills 773, and the 1st Battalion 9th Infantry takes Hills 940 and 983. That's the 3 hills that make up the ridge. The estimates of KPA losses run to over 15,000 men, 4,000 of them killed. The ROK have lost around 1,000 of their number, and 2nd Division some 3,000 men to secure 3 of the many hundreds of little knobs dotting the Korean peninsula. The KPA have not fled, though. They've just pulled back to the next prominent ridgeline, one running perpendicular to Bloody Ridge and about 1,500 meters to the north. Bud Hannings in The Korean War, An Exhaustive Chronology, has some smaller detail on the fight this week for Bloody Ridge. On the 3rd, as the week begins, and the 1st Battalion, 9th Infantry gets in gear, Company C makes its attacks after some airstrikes. Company C jumps off, but its composition has greatly changed in the past few days. Of the 3 platoons, the combined strength is about 85 troops, and of these, 2 of the platoons are battle-hardened, while the other is composed primarily of replacements. The vanguard leads the way. The advance presses against the first of a trio of bunkers, and then the second. But as they move forward, it begins to rain grenades. The grenade launching originates on the opposite side of a steep ravine. The troops sustain high casualties, but the first 2 bunkers are destroyed. The third bunker is able, however, to halt the advance. The platoon is too battered to continue. That's about par for the course. They do manage to take out the third bunker using flamethrowers firing indirect fire over the top of the ridge that separates the 2 sides by not that many meters. Hanning points out how much the communist side has taken advantage of the lull of the peace talks to rebuild and replenish, which I also have pointed out pretty much week after week. During 1st U.S. Marine Division's operations this week, which take the Hayes Line, the northern rim of the Punch Bowl, Hanning says the communist firepower is almost equivalent to that of the Marines and the U.S. Army units that support them, and that's new. With peace talks suspended for who knows how long, there are a lot of plans for new attacks afoot. During the fight for Bloody Ridge, 8th Army Commander Jim Van Fleet has given UN Forces Commander Matt Ridgway a plan, or more of an outline, called Talons, which would advance and remove the sag in the eastern part of the front lines. But you know what? Preparations for Talons continued until the 5th of September, when Van Fleet evidently took a close look at the final casualty totals of the Bloody Ridge fight. Since Talons would be on a much larger scale, Van Fleet decided that the operation was not worth the probable cost in lives and material. So he's going to use limited, elbowing attacks, right? To try and gain some ground in the east in September, then stop those October 1st, and have 1st Corps after that launch a big attack in the west. Then launch an amphibious attack in the east near Tongchong. On the 8th, he issues orders to his corps commanders to conduct limited objective attacks and recon, and also specifically instructs 10th Corps to take that next ridge north of Bloody Ridge and the Punch Bowl. A few days from now, U.S. 2nd Division, the ROK, will move forward and repeat the Bloody Ridge process against that ridge. It will likely be heartbreaking. There's another operation, Operation Minden, that begins this week and will end a few days from today. See, U.S. 1st Corps has the longest front in 8th Army, from the west coast to near Gimhua in the center of the peninsula. But there's a salient in the lines by a big curve in the Imjin River. Operation Minden, or perhaps it's Minden, I'm not certain, is to eliminate it, and it involves James Castle's 1st Commonwealth Brigade crossing the river and occupying the ground in the river bend. This begins the 8th, and the flanking South Koreans and American units also follow suit. It will end the 12th with the front line some 5 kilometers north of the river, though there will be some adjustments after that for a couple more days. The new line is way closer to the enemy, and so patrolling will be much more regular. There's also some notable patrolling in the air this week. Today, the 9th, 6 Sabres under Richard Becker, leading 334th Interceptor Fighter Squadron, attack right into a larger force of MiGs despite the odds. They totally disrupt the enemy formation. Becker will shoot down a plane this day, bringing his total to 5. Also on the 9th, Ralph Gibson from 335th Interceptor Fighter Squadron shoots down a MiG, his 5th kill. This makes them both flying aces, joining James Jabara as the first jet-to-jet flying aces. There's something else that happens away from Korea or away from the whole Far East that is still relevant to the war and those conducting it. The San Francisco Conference is held from September 4th to 8th. It results in representatives from 48 nations signing the Treaty of San Francisco at the War Memorial Opera House on the 8th. This treaty officially establishes peace between the Allies and Japan on behalf of the UN, ending the legal state of World War II, meaning the state of hostilities and occupation. The treaty won't go into effect until next April, but it is to end the occupation of Japan, return full sovereignty, give compensation to victims of Japanese war crimes, and stuff like that. Most of the Allied nations are there, as well as former Allied possessions like the Philippines and Lebanon. Italy did declare war on Japan in July 1945, but is not invited. Burma, India, and Yugoslavia are invited, but they have not sent any representatives. India considers the terms of the treaty too restrictive on Japanese future sovereignty. They might sign a separate treaty at some point in future. As I've said a few times before, Communist China has not been invited, neither, though, is Taiwan. It's interesting that the US recognizes Chiang Kai-shek's Taiwan regime as China, but the UK officially recognizes Mao Zedong's People's Republic of China since last year in 1950. Portugal was neutral in World War II, but its colony East Timor had been in fact invaded by the Japanese, but they're still not invited. Korea isn't invited either, since people like the US and the USSR disagree over who the real Korea is. The Soviets do send representatives under Deputy Foreign Minister Andrei Gromyko. From the start, they vigorously opposed the text of the treaty draft as it is being prepared. And on the 8th, they release a statement against the treaty. They have a bunch of issues with it. 1, the Soviets weren't properly consulted in the treaty preparations. 2, it gives no guarantee against Japanese militarism rising again. 3, it sets up Japan like it's an American military base. 4, which puts Japan in a military coalition against the USSR. 5, China was the main victim of Japanese aggression, and they're not even involved here. 6, it violates the Yalta Agreement by not recognizing Soviet sovereignty over South Sakhalin and the Kuril Islands. What madness be this, says Gromyko. Or, okay, I wish he says that, but maybe he did, but I have no record of him saying that. Don't you wish he said that? Anyhow, the Soviets do not sign the treaty. Neither do the Poles nor the Czechs, who have also sent representatives. They follow in the Soviet footsteps, right? You know who does give full voice support for a free Japan? Ceylon does. Now, the Dominion of Ceylon has only been independent within the Commonwealth of Nations since 1948. But its finance minister, J.R. Jayawardena, speaks out. The New York Times has this to say about his words. The voice of free Asia, eloquent, melancholy, and still strong with the lilt of an Oxford accent, dominated the Japanese Peace Treaty Conference today. And that he does. See, there are plenty of people who are worried about Japanese militarism resurfacing, and about a Japan capable of unilateral free action, and that the surrender terms from 1945 should maybe be enforced, but not JR. He wants a fully free Japan and says Ceylon won't even accept reparations from Japan since that could really mess up Japan's economy. His words. The damage caused by air raids, by the stationing of enormous armies under the Southeast Asia Command, and by the slaughter tapping of one of our main commodities, rubber, when we were the only producer of natural rubber for the Allies, entitles us to ask that the damage so caused should be repaired. We do not intend to do so, for we believe in the words of the great teacher, Buddha, that hatred ceases not by hatred, but by love. His words are received with huge applause. The US and Japan also signed a security treaty this same day. This the Soviets object to because it does establish a military alliance between the US and Japan. But signing it is a condition for ending the American occupation. It has 5 articles, and it does allow the US to continue to have military bases in Japan after occupation is over. But no other nations are allowed to have the same without American consent. Furthermore, the US can use those forces in Japan as they see fit without consulting the Japanese government. It does not, though, say that those forces have any obligation to defend Japan should Japan be attacked. One thing that troubles many Japanese is that there is no specific expiration date for these terms, nor how the treaty might ever end. Well, this has yet to be ratified. This all has yet to be ratified, and it will likely be many months before it goes into effect. But I can imagine it being extremely controversial to the Japanese people at large. And there I will leave you for this week of the war, with Bloody Ridge coming to an end and people gearing up for the next Bloody Ridge beyond it. Troops moving around to get ready for other future battles, new flying aces, and the San Francisco Conference. J.R. Jayawardena has a bunch more to say in his speech about the treaty with Japan, of course. It isn't just a few sentences. But he finishes with the following words, which I shall share with you to end the week. This treaty is as magnanimous as it is just to a defeated foe. We extend to Japan the hand of friendship and trust that with the closing of this chapter in the history of man, the last page of which we write today, and with the beginning of the new one, the first page of which we dictate tomorrow, her people and ours may march together to enjoy the full dignity of human life in peace and prosperity. Fine words. Maybe there's hope for us all. As most of you know, I already covered World War II in real time, week by week, like I'm doing Korea, for the entire duration of that war. Well, and the First World War before that, too. The regular coverage of World War II ended with a special episode a year and a week ago when Japan surrendered. That channel is still active, though, and we've done some fun stuff there, like a couple of chronological miniseries, most recently on the Sudan breakthrough, which covers it day by day. You should check out what's been happening there lately, and you can do that right there. These channels are all possible thanks to the Time Ghost Army. You too can join the army at timeghost.tv or patreon.com. Tony Kim is this channel's Army Member of the Week, and these are the newest commissioned officers. Do not forget to subscribe. I will see you next time.